Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. I'm Jack Smart, the senior film writer for the AV Club. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Henry Muñoz, Jesse Leigh, Abby McEnany, and Tonatiuh. How are you all?
Great.
Hey.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm really excited for this exact group of people. Let's start real quick by introducing yourselves one by one, name followed by I'd love to ask how you identify both your pronouns and any labels that you might ascribe to your identity, and then how you identify in Hollywood, maybe a job title or a job description. I will go first. I'm Jack Smart. My pronouns are he, him. I am gay and queer, and I identify as a writer and journalist. Henry, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'm Henry Muñoz. I identify as he, him. I'm gay, queer, Latino, and I'm the owner of Funny or Die Studios.
And Jesse.
Hi, my name is Jesse Leigh. I am non-binary, queer, and I go by they, them pronouns, and I am an actor.
And Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby McEnany. I have STC in there, subject to change. I currently use she, her. I consider myself a queer dyke. I feel fluid on gender and sexuality a lot. Figuring it out day by day, but yeah, so queer dyke is how I identify myself. I used to identify myself as a lesbian, and then I dated a trans man. I'm like, so queer identified. That's how it is. Oh, what do I do? Well, I'm currently unemployed. How about that? I'm an actor. Yeah, Jesse. I'm an actor and a writer, and hopefully, again, I get to create again and produce again. So we'll see.
Wonderful. And Tonatiuh.
Hi, my name is Tonatiuh. My pronouns are he, they. I'm an actor and a writer, most currently on the show Promised Land and the Peacock show Angeline. And I identify as queer or pansexual. Honestly, if you want to ask me out, just ask me out. That's how I call that's usually my motto.
I love that. My first question for each of you is, as queer entertainers or queer people in this industry, your journeys can sometimes be framed in terms of struggle, which we can and will get to. We were just saying, we will get to the struggle part, but I want to start, first of all, what about the other side of it? What are the joys you've experienced, the triumphs that keep you going? Why do each of you love what you do?
Sure. Honestly, it is a struggle, I suppose, but really it's been a gift. It's been a huge community builder for me. I mean, this industry, I got into it because of the power and impact that stories have on the way that we understand the world and how we relate to one another. But in that discovery, I found other artists who are weird and funny and creative, and I felt a lot less alone in the world. So my mission to make others feel less alone in the world ended up being my gift to myself as well. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I'll go next. I've spent my whole life doing things that I wasn't educated to do. So I never went to architecture school, but I spent 30 years working in architecture and urban design. I went to work for the President of the United States, Barack Obama. I had no idea what I was doing. I love storytelling and believe that this country doesn't do a good job of telling the story of who we really are as a people. So that's how I've spent my life. And I've tried to design massive change in cultural institutions, and most recently in healthcare. So I spent the last few years of my life testing and vaccinating and feeding people in the streets of New York, which was crazy for me if I ever thought that I would spend that time feeding people in the richest city in the richest country in the world. And when I came into contact with my colleagues and my partners at Funny or Die, there's a place that was already engaged and active and philanthropic. And I first met them when they wanted to put President Obama between two ferns. And I thought, well, this is a great place for us to express our power. Not as a Latino, as a gay man, I wanted to say we are capable of owning assets and being in decision-making roles. So it is about creating laughter. It is about creating joy. And it's also about expressing the power of our community upon the United States of America.
Wonderful. Yes, snaps.
Similar. to Henry. Storytelling has always been a part of my life. I started acting in community shows and just after school programs, doing theater. And it just brought me so much joy to connect with audience and to make an audience laugh or just feel something. And that's really where I found my community, was in the theater and connecting with other queer members and queer artists. And I feel like there's lately been such a change in Hollywood, especially when it comes to non-binary and trans representation. We just want to see that on our television more, and we're finally getting able to celebrate diversity. So that's what makes me so excited to be part of the industry right now.
I would say, like, I actually am very new to the industry. I've been improvising and storytelling and doing sketch comedy here in Chicago for over, 28 years now. Y'all, quite up there on the age scale. It's okay. And but I was just doing, and I honestly, I don't have a lot of marketable skills, and that's all I wanted to do. I've mental illness and depression, and sometimes it's like the only thing that would get me out of bed would be like, I get to go improvise with people that I love and do an art that is based on trust, and we all help each other. And it's like, I find it a very pure art form. And sometimes you fail miserably, but that's okay. You can just get back and you do it again. And I just was kind of here and doing that and writing, and I just always wanted to act. And I wasn't getting a lot of auditions, and the ones I did get, I just bombed. And so I was like, I got to write for myself. So I just started, I did a storytelling show that became a television show. Like, by how did that happen? Still trying to figure that out. Very lucky, very grateful. But it is about how, when you tell specific stories about your point of view, or a community point of view, you actually reach tons of people that maybe don't identify with that. And I think it's a way to really bring people together so they can understand, oh, that person looks different, identifies different, etc. But we're all human beings, and we're all doing the best we can, hopefully. Right. So I don't know. And I think, like, for me, as growing up fat, and always and just having that trope as a fat girl, and then as coming out first, like, as bi, and then a lesbian, as a man-hating lesbian. No, I think there's something powerful of seeing people on TV that aren't the conventionally gorgeous people that are safe, right, for Hollywood or for America. And I think that was something that was very important for me to be part of. And that is really, so what everybody else said, but it's just about telling stories. And I think it's the way we are so messed up. We are so fucked right now. And here come the tears. But when we tell our stories and tell our truths, that's the way to connect. And I think it has power beyond what we even know right now.
Absolutely. And Abby, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. It's also a perfect segue, because I always want to ask about inspiration, and it's always fascinating to ask anyone on any career path, was there a singular moment, a light bulb moment, an inspiration? But I'm already hearing, it sounds like for all of you, it's all about community. Did anybody have a mentor or somebody who really inspired them, whether that was like seeing somebody on screen that made you realize you could do this as a way of living? Or was it more like, I am discovering the power of community through doing my art?
I've had mentors. Go ahead. No, you go. Go.
I never had a mentor or someone non-binary or trans to look up to on screen, on television. So it was kind of finding my own path and finding my own route. And like I said earlier, I have grown up in theater, and that's where I found my community. And in middle school is when I went to Broadway and saw some amazing shows, and I saw Wicked, and I realized that these actors were getting paid to perform on stage. And to me, my 13-year-old self, I was like, they're getting paid? I thought you pay them to perform. That's the community theater in me. And and I realized that it was a job that I could pursue. And that's kind of like the moment that I realized that this is what I wanted to do for sure.
I love that. I had the exact same thing with The Lion King, so I hear you.
Yes.
Did anybody else have a light bulb moment like that?
I don't know if it was a light bulb moment. I just think it was just always something I gravitated to. I think I never wanted to do anything else, right? And I guess like I just never knew that it would it would happen. But I mean, I've just been doing it forever. So like if I did, I'd still be doing it if I didn't get that great opportunity I had, And I would say for mentors, like I don't have a specific one. I would say just like coming up in this improv community in Chicago, like, and it took a while, but like it really, I found I found my mentors and my colleagues and seeing folks just being kind and I that whole idea of everybody trying to create something together, that was I don't know, that's mentors are everywhere, I guess, for me, but not one specific or one light bulb thing. Yeah.
I realized something this year. I got to produce Funny Girl on Broadway, and I really wanted to do it because the time when I wanted to, I decided to come out to my mom, right? And she said, "Mijo, you didn't have to worry. I knew you were gay when you were 7 years old."
Yeah.
So I had really incredible, I'm lucky. I had parents who were super progressive labor leaders. Like my dad, like when you talk about SAG-AFTRA and the importance of a union family and protection of workers, my dad and my mom were both union organizers. And so I was on picket lines the entire time I was growing up. And my dad kept an IATSE card until the day that he died. I mean, it was amazing. It was always about being a person for others in our family. Like I never had the swimming pool or the new car or the best house, but I had that spirit, right? And I think they taught me to never be intimidated by anything. I mean, I've had a lot of teachers and mentors and people who teach me all the time, because like I said, I've never been educated to do anything that I've done. But, I just think that this idea of the more we can create stories, the more that people like my husband, I didn't know my husband was, I didn't even understand the word non-binary. My spouse is non-binary, trans femme. And so we've been on a journey. They've been mentoring me over the course of our marriage. And so I just think not being afraid, because our community is always told to be afraid, we're under attack, and instead lift ourselves and embrace our power. That's what we need to do. That's what I've learned. I've been around for a long time.
You and me both.
Beautiful.
I just want to, that's so beautiful. And
That's
I just think, thank you for sharing that. And I think also that shows a lot about, I think, when we, even in our own community, we come across some bigotry and some about like, fluidity or transness or non-binariness, and we're always learning, and it's okay to learn, and like, you don't know, be curious. And I just think you're right. We're like, as long as we're all open to learning, and we're just going to become better and stronger, and just really beautiful. So thank you, Henry.
No, I mean, just to echo off of you, our biases within our own community are blind spots. We may have, whether it comes to race, class, gender, we're not a monolith. Being queer isn't a monolith, and we are all educating each other. And I think being open to that is really important. For me, I didn't really have a key moment, but if I did have to pick one, it was just in high school. I got a full scholarship to go to UCLA to study politics, because your parents are undocumented, and you're going to be their little lawyer, their little translator, their little doctor, etc. But growing up as a queer, femme, Latino boy, you learn a code switch real quick. And I always just loved being in community, being in theater. And my English teacher told me one day, he was like, "Why didn't you apply to a conservatory or go to an acting school if that's what you like?" And my response was, "That's an option." That wasn't a possibility. And I made the most financially and fiscally responsible decision and went to USC with no scholarship to study acting.
Oh,
And I've had a bunch of angels along the way who've helped usher me and teach me and gave me opportunities and took a chance on me. Some of them being like Tina Sriracha, Matt Lopez, Julie Rager at 21st Century Fox. It's just life has a way.
yeah, it's a beautiful kind of takeaway that mentors are everywhere, or aspiring or early career artists should be open to the idea that mentorship can exist anywhere and that community can be built anywhere. And it's also so cool that arts or acting or writing or creating is inherently going to be a mentor-mentee relationship. It just is inherently, the community building is part of the art. And part of the reason I'm so interested in this, and of course, this is maybe specifically more for the actors, I'm thinking of Jesse and Tonatiuh, you're on network television shows, which are shown to people across America all the time.
Yeah.
How much are you thinking about bringing your own queerness to that space? Like, of course, we've all touched on this, but how do you think about inhabiting that space as a queer person? Is it an intentional, trailblazing, conscious process? Or is it more like I am trying to be as authentically as who I am? And depending on how the rest of this contextualizes or frames that, it is what it is.
I'd say personally, it's been a combination of both. I started acting professionally with an agent and found my manager about 7 years ago. And all the auditions that I had been going on were for gay male characters. And not about until 2-3 years ago, I started seeing more and more scripts for non-binary or trans characters. And this last project that I'm on, Rutherford Falls on Peacock, the character Bobby had originally been written for a gay male presenting kid. And that's when I started to, I guess, bring myself to the role. And I just walked in and dressed how I want and did my makeup how I want. And they seemed to really love that. And I got the role, and I wanted to make the character's pronouns they, them, because I had never read a script that referred to a character like that. So I was very adamant on that. And the creators of the show, Ed Helms, Mike Schur, and Ciartella Ornelas, they were very open, of course, to having that. So I just thank the writers also for having this collaboration. But it's been a lot of bringing myself to the characters, I'd say.
So inspiring.
That's so powerful.
Truly. Thank you for doing that. In my instance, my whole reason for getting into acting was, yes, a passion, but also, again, the stories that we tell inform the culture that we live in, and the culture that we live in informs the policies that get enacted. So to me, storytelling is a form of activism. So when I get hired to a project, I usually come in with a thesis. I feel like I'm some kind of human anthropologist telling a culture that sometimes I'm a part of and sometimes I'm not. So with Promise Land in particular, when I first read the script, the role was offered to me, and I wasn't particularly sure if I wanted to do it because I was really curious as to what the arc of the character was going to be. And I said no, and then casting came back, and they kept insisting that they would love to see me and work with me. And I said I would love an opportunity to talk to someone from casting to see where the story's going. Instead of casting calling, Matt Lopez, the showrunner, called. And so he pitched to me his version of the story, and he said if I would be interested in doing that. And I said, I would, but here's my version, and here's what I think I would be really interested in exploring. And so what I pitched was, if Antonio is the villain, right, and was exiled by his own family, what happens then to a person when they're betrayed by their own family and are riddled with shame? as defined by Dr. Brene Brown, I am wrong versus guilt, I did something wrong, right? And so that internalization of that betrayal, you thus become the betrayer. And we talked about, I brought in some resources from the Velvet Rage or from psychological studies to show different ways that people aren't bad, their actions are nasty, right? And what led them to that. And Matt was just like, it was like an hour-long conversation, and he was so gracious and collaborative and just said, I love that, I'm in. And I said, great, I'm in as well. And being on a show like that was just marvelous. I mean, he opened himself up to all of the actors and their experience and gave us a 48-hour window after getting the production draft to send comments and questions and ideas. And, you know, and that on a network show at the speed that we shoot is the biggest gift and the biggest trust that you can be given.
Wonderful. I love
Again,
that these
super powerful. Sorry. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, these are two examples of, like, Jesse, you came in and said, this is where I think the character is coming from. And Tonatiuh, you came in and said, this is where I think the character is going. And actors, for one thing, should always feel empowered to have a say in those things because they're the authorities on their characters. But one of the questions I had for all of you, and this is related to that, is what do you do if in a situation where maybe your collaborators are not necessarily as open to making changes to accommodate your identity or to accommodate the space that you're taking up? Like, what is your advice to those maybe lower on the totem pole of the call sheet or of any production? How do you effect change? How do you make waves, you know, and make progress in a way that's not alienating?
Well, may I offer, like, I mean, because you posed the question, I think when I was younger, because of growing up queer and being attacked, you grow a bit of a callousness or a bit of a bite. And I've learned to soften and give people the generosity of the doubt, right? Instead of like giving them the benefit of the doubt, being generous in my assumption about them. And I think everyone in Hollywood wants to do a good job. They want to be inclusive. I mean, not everyone, but I think most of the creators right now really want to be inclusive. And so presenting things in a way of like, oh, you don't, like, how can you know what you don't know? You know, and it's, instead of coming from a place of authority, it's coming from a place of collaboration. And obviously, like, we are employed to tell their story. They're writing the story and they have their vision, right? But offering something or offering a perspective or offering even your own lived experience is a lot different than telling someone they're wrong, than telling them to change it, right? And just that generosity alone tends to shift some of those ideas. Some battles will be won and some won't, and that's okay. But I think that even just having the courage and the grace to present it in a way, or even present it at all, really starts getting people to start thinking a little bit differently. And maybe this episode it didn't work, but perhaps the next one it will.
Sure. It's a beautiful point. And you mentioned earlier the idea of code switching. It's for better or worse, all queer people know how to do that, how to soften that bite or walk that callousness.
And yeah, until we're in positions of power. And even then.
Yeah. Well, and so even then, so that's why I wanted to ask Henry as well, in terms of your career path. First of all, we got to just talk about, why did you buy Funny or Die? And what is the vision for Funny or Die? Because that's fascinating. But the same idea of, like, bringing your queerness into any space. I have read your interviews. I have seen the work that you're putting out. You take every chance to mention that the way that you identified at the start of this conversation, you are gay, you are Latino. Like, how conscious is all of this? It sounds like the answer is it's very conscious.
It's always what opens the front door. Mm-hmm. I mean, what Tonatiuh just described is a metaphor for the moment that we're living in as a country, right? And it's hard work. I mean, we need to be better at what we do. We need to be present. We need to tell our stories, but it's never easy because there is a racism against the LGBTQIA community, against communities of color, against mestizos in this country. I mean, there is a moment where people would have you believe that the American dream isn't big enough for all of us. And the only way I think that you battle that, quite honestly, is to commit to creating cultural understanding. And the way I think that we do it is through telling stories, but we're everywhere. We're in every family. We're in every neighborhood, every community. We're leaders in this country. We need to elect ourselves to public office. We need to own studios. We need to be in movies. We need to be on television. But, once people begin to see you, right, just like this, right, I see you, then they go, oh, okay. I mean, there's some people who are never going to learn the lesson, but the more we do this, the better off we're going to be, the happier the country's going to be. I want a joyful, laugh-filled country. That's what I want. I believe that when people have their rights, when kids aren't attacked, when I'm not attacked, when immigrants are attacked, the country is happier and more joyful. That's the kind of country I want to live in. And that's our job. And I bought Funny or Die because, if I didn't laugh, I was going to cry. The last few years we've been living in. And I believe that laughter is a powerful, powerful tool. And the more we employ it, the better off we're going to be as a country and as humanity. And we need it. And Funny or Die was willing. Will Ferrell and Adam McKay were willing to sell it to me and stay involved with it and to make it a place that was not just funny or die, but funny, original, and diverse. And that's what I want to see. And more studios should do that.
Absolutely. Well, and so Abby, now I get to ask the big question that I've been wanting to ask you, because Henry just said, we need to tell our stories. Where does autobiographical inspiration factor into your journey? And where does that apply in terms of advice? Like, what is the advice to other queer or just other creators?
So the show that I had was called Work in Progress, and it was based on a character named Abby McEnany. She just changed the name, y'all. But and it was very, you learn a lot on your first gig. I learned a lot. And it was basically fairly autobiographical. Can I go back to one thing? And that I just want to also say, I don't know, I come from an amazing life of privilege. So, and I got my first gig, my first job in Hollywood at 51. So when you were saying how do you go in, I don't know the answer to that, because again, I can't tell a young queer person or a person new to the industry and say no, go. I don't know what the answer is. So I'm so glad for Jesse and Tonatiuh, their experiences, because they're showing power. You both are showing power in yourselves. And I think that's so powerful. But I feel like I don't want to really say this is what you should do, because I don't know. And I'm coming from a place of privilege. So that's why I didn't really jump in on that one. The autobiographical stuff, for me, I don't know. I did a storytelling show here, and it was and because I started doing storytelling, which I thought was such a powerful art. I was asked to do a story for this event, and I was like, oh, that sounds scary. Do it. And then I really liked it, because you can tell the truth, and then you can also protect yourself. But you're also you're connecting about one specific topic. And I was like, I really like this. So after a few years, I did a 55-minute show. How self-involved, what a bitch. Anyways, and so I did this show, and I think it's powerful. For me, it was powerful to stand up at the Improv Theater, which is now closed during the pandemic, but to in this small theater of 60 people and tell stories. And it's very vulnerable. As somebody who's, I'm not on social media, I think it's a horrible, horrible disease. And I people are so sick of me talking about it. But anyways, I'm a very private person. And so it doesn't really jibe, right? That I wrote a show that really kind of tears open my brain and my heart about what a mess I am. What was y'all?
No, but it sounds like that was necessary. You just reached a point where telling your story, it just had to be told.
Right. And I think also it's the story I know the best. And I don't know if you can, and I remember there was we were talking before we started recording about the state of abortion or the rights and access, which I did the storytelling show in 2016. And I remember talking about the state of abortion in the 1980s and talked to my parents about it. And I was like, oh, and I was like, in 2016, like, how is it worse? And I'm like, oh my God, it's 2022. And Henry, what you were saying is like, why do I, like, growing up in the, like, when I was in high school in the 80s, and I thought that was like like draconian times, and it's like, where are we living? Like I don't know. I went off. Jesse, I went off my story.
Sound great.
I mean, I don't know.
I love it. Well, and I just got to say, like, Henry, your idea that we want a joy-filled country, it shouldn't, I don't know why that's like a light bulb moment for me. That shouldn't be a revolutionary idea. The fact that it is, it seems like that's such a small ask. And it's also a great point that that's what you guys are doing. You're entertainers. You're there to provide joy. Maybe work towards a more joyful world.
And what Henry said, like, oh, sorry, Henry.
No, I was just saying, wouldn't that be great?
I mean, yeah. And what you said earlier, like laughter is a powerful, I think you said tool. And it's healing. Like when my mom, when she was dying, she was sick, and she was sick over 3.5 years, and then she died after 3.5 years. But like, there was so much healing by laughing, and in our family, there was so much healing by, like, humor. And I'm a big fan of dark humor and stuff. And it was just like our family healed. It's just like the worst time in our lives. And there was just a lot of like, I healed a lot with my relationship with my dad. Not that it was the worst, but it was, like, I mean, people can heal. And it's really easy for me to lose hope. Like, it's just really easy as somebody who just isolates a lot. But there are good people. There are people who want to do that. I don't know.
Don't lose hope.
I know it's so easy. I know. And I just like, when I'm like, don't lose hope. And then I'm like, I can't. But I think it's easy. But then we just remind each other, like, we tell our stories, we commune, we learn about each other. There is so much good stuff out there. And I mean, everybody has a story.
I listened to Tonatiuh, and I'm actually very hopeful. I went to a speech that my spouse did this last week at the only LGBTQ art museum in the world. There's only one.
Oh.
And they spoke, they were asked a question about, young people. And they said, I'm counting on young people to save us.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that we view identity today, the hopefulness, I think, of young people who are set free from some of the thing. I mean, I struggled to come out. I already told you that. I just think that we should laugh, and then we need to be motivated to action. And I do think that we need to remember that our power is in the vote, because, you can see right now, and I think Clarence Thomas in particular at the Supreme Court has made it very clear that people's rights are going to be attacked. And it's not just women. Now it's our community, the LGBTQIA community. And you can see that in the same way that they dealt with Roe v. Wade, state by state, in my home state of Texas, we're separating trans youth from their parents and their teacher. In Florida, don't say gay. And so we cannot be complacent about that. And the only way to deal with that is to make our own voices heard. And I mean, not just in this industry, but we have to, and you all, I mean, I look at the fabulous actors on this call, this Zoom, and I say, well, then people look up to you. They listen to you. And you need to tell them to go out and vote, because that's the only solution. That's the only way our community will be represented.
It's just, I mean, it's crazy. Yes, I do agree with you. I mean, I'm turning 30, and looking at this new generation of young queers is astonishing. But I also think that we inherit gifts from the communities before us. I mean, the generations before us also fought heavily and strong. And I'd like to remind people, especially those who are watching, 1968, New York City. It was against the law. There were sodomy laws in New York City. You could not wear articles of clothing you had to wear of the opposite gender. You could get arrested. And the DSM-4 said that homosexuality was a mental illness. And the government said if you had a mental illness, you couldn't carry a license, meaning you couldn't be a doctor, a lawyer, or even a school teacher, a hairstylist. And so they would out you in the papers in 1968. That is within all of, like, this is recent history. So to think that, yes, we've come a long way, yeah, but it's so fragile and we cannot stop, like, at all.
Yeah, it's a balancing of optimism and pessimism, of hoping for the best and preparing for the worst, and seeing what we can do in our own individual lives. Like what can we do in our own circles? And of course, as artists, it's how can I translate that into story? Because as we've all been saying, an emerging theme here is that representation matters. Who we see on our TV screens and on our stages and on our film screens matters. And living your authentic self, it sounds so cliche, but it is unfortunately revolutionary. It is, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think that if you're in a position of being able to cast and being able to like hire folks, like that's where, you know, you got, like, just when you start creating, like, you write the characters, you make sure that you have a, like, you know, a diverse writing room. You make sure that the people behind the camera, like, you know, like that the crew is diverse. I mean, like, everything is so segregated and so much of the world, and only the change only happens like creators and writers come together, and they and then, you know, that, and the actors like share their experiences, and then you change every part of the experience, hopefully. And it's brick by brick, you know. And I think that, like, in my depth, you know, my dips of hope and stuff, and it's things like this, and then like being out in the world, like we had Pride in Chicago this past weekend, and it was like, right. And I was like, okay, just go out for a bit, you know, and just being around, I was like, right, we are here, we are everywhere, you know, that old thing, like, we are everywhere. We really are. And it's beautiful and powerful, and out of grief can come great community, horribly enough, but community and action, you know.
Yeah.
And then joy. I mean, joy of community, like connecting and movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you one of my questions too was, how do we get casting directors and it's really important to talk about the behind the camera people and how they have to create an inclusive environment too.
I was really lucky because Lily Wachowski was my partner on this.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was awesome. And so, you know, when you have her as your warrior and your partner on this, you know, she's very strong and can be like, you know, we're going to do this. And it's like, yeah, we are. So it was like, I didn't have a lot of pushback against what we were doing with our show. And I think it was kind of like, we were far away, we're here in Chicago, whatever, but it's like every step. And it's like, who do you hire on your crew? Like, how do you get people of color, queer people, trans people, non-binary people, women, grips, camera operators, lighting, like everything. Like, how do you get people behind, like, how does this whole industry become who we really are, which is diverse and inclusive, hopefully inclusive.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have to wrap relatively soon, but I wanted to ask everybody about, advice. You've all touched on such wonderful, beautiful, practical advice. I'm wondering if there's one, like, if you could just distill, maybe there's one tip or piece of advice that you wish you had known or that you would give your younger self in reference to the career trajectory that you are on. It's always my favorite question.
And always the stumper.
It always gets people thinking. Absolutely.
I think that Henry's, like, I'm so empowered by you, Henry, like that you were like, you weren't educated for any of this, but like what I've learned, like like there's so many people who aren't, and there's some people that you'll meet along the way who think they know everything or they pretend they do. And it's like, no, you don't. Like we're all learning, and we just go, I would say to tell my younger self, like, hang in there, girl, because it was, hang in there, and you're worthy, and you have a story to tell, and there are people there that want to help you tell it, and you're going to meet beautiful people that change your life, And you are all meeting you all. It's just been beautiful. So thank you all so much.
I would say to my younger self, just keep going. I think we're all here today because we haven't stopped and we've kept going and going and going in order to tell our stories and to celebrate our differences. And a few years ago, I was at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation taking workshop classes like every week, and just being able to find your community and your queer community, that they'll have your back.
I'm really proud of you all. I mean, I think somebody needs to tell you how proud they are of who you are and what you've been able to accomplish. You're amazing, and people look up to you. And if I could go back, I guess to my own life, but just to people who walk in the door after me, I would say, don't be afraid. We're living in a moment where fear is just as powerful as laughter, right? And people want to tell you to be afraid. Keep your head down. Don't stand up. Don't use your voice. You don't belong here. You should be afraid. And I knew what I know now, I'd say I had no reason to be afraid. I shouldn't waste time. I belong here. And yes, there will be people on the other side of the door who want to help.
Yeah, mine is similar. I think just a reminder that you are enough. And that focus on those who see you, as opposed to trying to force people who don't see you to do so. Because there's a coalition of people who already love you and support you and want you to thrive. And not taking those people for granted is super important.
Yes, it can be easy to take those people for granted or to forget that community is there. It's just been so inspiring to hear what are essentially, you've all given examples of that fearlessness, like of this notion of either, I'm thinking of Henry, not having the expertise and just going for it anyway, or like Jesse, it's so cool, this idea of, on the one hand, I'm like, you didn't have anyone saying, no, you can't change your character in Rutherford Falls, you can't change them fundamentally. But on the other hand, you also were like looking around and seeing that there weren't examples of it. So it's just leaning into the fearlessness and just ignoring the pessimism, right? And ignoring the voices in your head or the voices that are also around us, that are also external, actual people, to just keep going. Yeah. It's not really a question. It's more of just, would anyone like to close us out with any last, like, are there causes that we should also be supporting in addition, of course, to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation? Any other specific actions we can take in the wake of this very politically fraught moment, the end of a very politically fraught Pride Month?
I think we fighting for abortion access, like what Henry's, they're coming after everybody. This is just like, to think that this is where it stops is incredibly naive. And I'm not that any of us believe that, but I think a lot of people who are like, oh, they're not going to come after all these other folks. It's a really fraught time, but can be very powerful. And I think there's so many brilliant people around who have information and go strive to find it. And also at the meantime, help people on the ground who are providing care. And I know, so I really see that. I believe that they're all intertwined. This thing. So that's where my brain is right now, if you can tell.
Definitely, yeah.
I would just say, if you're like me, you probably had to work really hard to be proud of who you are, right? It wasn't easy for me. And so I take pride very seriously. And so happy Pride. And if you have any ability to do anything to help one person or to help a community of people, then do it.
Yeah, I think we're a coalition, and there's a poem, a small, tiny poem that I'd like to read from World War II by Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. We're not alone, and this is a pivotal moment in history. And it is time to get activated if you aren't already, and to enlist and enroll as many of your people to get activated, because it may not be you today, but it could be you tomorrow.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you all so, so much. This is so beautiful. I'm going to wrap us up now. On behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, process, and craft with your fellow performers. Let's all wave goodbye. Happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride. Thank you.